The new news that came out of Maine yesterday is the Secretary of State there, and she's a Democrat. She issued a 34-page decision following a challenge that was brought in Maine. And in Maine, if you bring a challenge, you don't bring it to the court first. You bring it administratively, apparently, through the Secretary of State's office.
That's correct.
And she made the decision based on Maine law that Donald Trump is not qualified to be on the presidential ballot in Maine.
Yes.
And now that'll be challenged, and it'll go through state court in Maine. So it'll go to our level, whatever they call the Superior Court there, and then potentially up to Maine's Supreme Court, and then who knows from there. And the question, obviously, that everybody is asking is that the same here in Arizona? Because you made the decision that Trump is qualified to be on the ballot here. So I wanted to ask you, tell us about the difference. Why is there a difference?
Well, first and foremost, there's a foundational issue here, right? And the foundational issue is the 10th Amendment. You know, rights that don't belong to the federal government in the Constitution are reserved to the states. Well, the states get to decide how elections get run in certain spaces, and this is one of them. And the other foundational thing is that the presidency under Article 2 of the Constitution is unique. It's not a legislative, representative in the House or senator. It's a unique political position. So it only applies to one office. These rules only apply there. And they apply separately in separate states, differently, right? And so in Arizona, for example, when Mr. Trump applied, he said, I'm qualified in Michigan and I'm qualified in New Hampshire. And Arizona state law obliges me in my official capacity to certify a person who is qualified in 2 other states. So it's not even like I had a choice. The law dictates that you have this access. Now, there's a couple other ways. Well, there's one other way to get on the ballot, and that's with petition signatures, but we'll put that aside. So whether or not I agree with Maine is irrelevant. What I agree with is the notion that the law is what the law is.
Right.
The 10th Amendment, states' rights, reserves this to the states. And in Arizona, my job was to look to the application, and he met the requirements, and so off you go.
So in Arizona, the requirements are that basic. It's if you're certified to be on the presidential ballot in 2 other states, you have to be put on the ballot in Arizona.
It is that is my duty as the Secretary of State. Now, that having been said, is it a done deal? Well, you could still have court challenges and all this other kinds of stuff that can happen. Of course, that's possible. But as it stands today, in Arizona, Donald Trump is on the ballot. We drew the order for the ballots for the presidential preference election the other day. I can't remember where he is on their ballot or where Joe Biden is on the Democrats' ballot. Doesn't matter. Bottom line is he's eligible according to Arizona law unless and until we get a court order telling us otherwise.
Are there, Adrian Fontes is with us, the Arizona Secretary of State. Are there any that you're aware of, any pending lawsuits challenging Donald Trump's position on the Arizona ballot?
Not that I'm aware of right now. There was one that got kind of pushed aside by the courts. I don't know if there's going to be an appeal on that ruling. But the bottom line is, we are where we are right now in Arizona. We've got our ballots set up, and we're good to go. And like look at the Colorado case, for example, right? The district court in Colorado where that lawsuit was brought said that Donald Trump wasn't an officer under the Constitution, so the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to the presidency.
Which does seem odd to me, but okay.
Bizarre. And the Colorado Supreme Court agreed with you and I.
Right.
And said, yeah, he is an officer. And they rejected the former president from being on the ballot. Fine. But again, this is an illustration of the rule of law. The law says under the 10th Amendment that the states get to decide certain things. And this is a perfectly good illustration. Again, it's the slow-rolling civics lesson that we've seen unfold over the past several years where people are starting to figure out, there are some nuances. This is sophisticated. This is complex. It's not just black and white. What does your gut tell you? That's not what the rule of law is about. In fact, it's the opposite. Sometimes the rule of law doesn't give you the result that you personally want, but you have to respect the rule of law.
Adrian Fontes is with us, Secretary of State of Arizona, and I agree with you. Obviously, you have to follow that rule of law. So let me ask you this: how does the 14th Amendment and that qualification, the language we're talking about, Section 3, that if a person is aiding, abetting, or participating in an insurrection, they can't be an officer, can't be elected to an officer in the United States, is the only way to challenge that in Arizona to file a lawsuit?
Well, the voters could decide.
Well, if he's on the ballot already.
But if he's on the ballot already, the voters can decide.
Is the only way to make it where he's not on the ballot because he's not qualified?
But Barry, that's an unanswered question. So there's a couple of layers to this as well. Again, this is complicated stuff.
Yeah.
First of all is the question of qualification for the ballot. Second of all is the qualification for seating of electors to a person who might be otherwise deemed ineligible under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And the third is whether or not that person can get inaugurated, even if they do have enough electoral college votes. Those are three different legal statuses that a person can have: candidate, elect, or inaugurated and actually serving in the office. These are questions that have not yet been answered by the United States Supreme Court. And so we've seen legal analysis from a variety of different corners in the United States bringing up these particular issues. And is that splitting hairs? Yeah, that's what lawyers do. We split hairs.
We get deep in the weeds. So you're saying that potentially Trump's on the ballot. Let's just say, for the sake of our discussion now, he wins. He wins the vote. He wins the electoral college vote. And you're saying somebody could file a lawsuit in federal court at that point that says the electoral college can't vote for him because he's not qualified due to the 14th Amendment, Section 3.
Entirely possible.
Okay. And the same thing could happen again before the inauguration.
Entirely possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're nowhere near done with this, and this is going to be, unless and until the United States Supreme Court steps in and said, here's how to read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. When you are an officer, you take an oath, and you act against the Constitution after that, then you're ineligible to serve. How does that work? Right? So we just don't know. But the rule of law tells us we got to wait till the Supreme Court decides. We can't just figure these things out willy-nilly. And until then, in Arizona at least, I am duty-bound to follow the law. The law tells me that if Mr. Trump is eligible in 2 other states, which he is, I put him on the ballot, which I've done, and that's that, like it or not.
In Arizona, have the primary ballots already been submitted or printed or whatever we do with them?
So we've got the order established for the 2 primary ballots, for the Democratic presidential preference election and the Republican presidential preference election. And by the way, Barry, I have to say this for everyone out there. If you are not registered with the Democratic or the Republican Party for the March presidential preference election, you are not eligible to vote. It is a closed presidential primary.
So if you're registered as an independent in Arizona, you cannot vote in the presidential primary.
That's correct. Now, if you want to, you can switch and join up with one of the parties. You can cast that ballot and you can switch back. That's perfectly legal. This is different, though, than the regular August primaries that come before our general elections every 2 years. That has been a point of confusion in the past, and my mission is to make absolutely certain that Arizona voters are fully aware. If you are not registered as either a Republican or a Democrat in the presidential preference election, you are not eligible to vote. That's just the law. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Other people don't like it. Folks think that everybody should be eligible to vote. I agree with that, but that's not what the law says. And so people should refrain from trying to kind of gum up the system or re-register for the time and then move back.
What's the fastest way to change your party registration so that you can vote in the presidential primary election? Is it online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can go to Arizona.vote. You can go to servicearizona.com, I think is still an option. In Maricopa County, you can go to beballotready.vote, and you can find your personal dashboard. We created that back under my administration, and Recorder Richard has kind of amplified that a little bit. You can go to your county recorder, who is the registrar of voters. They're the ones who own voter registration. We house one of the systems, but in the secretary's office. But go to your county recorder, their website. That's the best place to do it.
So the quickest one you said was
servicearizona.com,
which is where your driver's license is, but you can change it there. And also, what was the other one? Vote
for Maricopa. Beballotready.
Beballotready.
These systems talk to each other.
Yeah.
In the background.
It's quick. I've done it before, where you can just jump in there. You pull yourself up. You change your party. You switch it from independent to Republican or Democrat, whatever you want.
Right.
By the way, if you're a Democrat and you want to vote in the Republican primary, you can do that. You just switch over to Republican.
You switch over.
Yeah.
And now you got to do it early enough, right, so that it registers in the system. February 20th is the last day to register for the election. Now, can you switch your party after that? Yes, but don't chance it. We're just going to say February 20th is the last day to do your registration for the March 19th election, because it's also the last day to register in the first place. So if you're not registered to vote, which I think every eligible American ought to do, register to vote, because that's how you use your voice in our system, by February 20th for the March 19th presidential preference election, which is a closed partisan exercise. Only party participants are eligible to vote in that election. And that's really important for us to share with folks, because, again, we want to make sure that we're following the rules. The rule of law is important, everything from voter registration all the way up. And it's important, I think, for us to be able to share that message with folks. So, whether or not you like the candidates, whether or not you like the parties, just understand the process, and you can go a long way in those discussions when you're having chats about crispy, salty snacks over the holidays.
That's right.
That we didn't get to talk about.
Go do it now. If you want to switch, you want to vote into a particular presidential primary, go do it quickly before you forget.
Absolutely.
Adrian Fontes, thank you for coming in, and I appreciate you sharing that information with us. I know folks were curious what's going on in Arizona.
Really happy to. And listen, Happy New Year to you and
Happy New
yours.
Year.
And I
You
hope
too.
you and everybody here at KTAR have a prosperous New Year.
Thank you very much. All right, Adrian Fontes, Secretary of State of the state of Arizona. As always, great information. Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch the first season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.